Hello everyone and welcome back. If you have any stories you want me to read, send them to my email. But for today, get ready and grab your flashlight, cause these scary Walmart stories will keep you awake tonight. Number 1. This happened about a week and a half before Easter. For some background, I am a 29-year-old female, about 5 feet tall. However, most people mistake me for a 15 to 16-year-old girl. The youngest I have ever been mistaken for was about a 9 to 10-year-old kid, but that was by my nanny's best friend who hadn't seen me in years and just assumed I was one of her great-grandchildren. It was actually quite funny and we all had a good laugh. Anyways, on the weird encounter, my mom needed to go to Walmart to pick up a few things that my dad had asked her to get. They both needed in preparation for their upcoming trip to go to West Virginia four-wheeler riding. My mom, dad, one of my sisters, her husband, and my 4 nephews and nieces were going for Easter weekend. This would be my mom's first time going, and she wasn't really happy that they planned the trip on Easter weekend. But they assured her they would be back early Sunday so we could still celebrate and have Easter dinner with my other 2 sisters and other 4 nephews and nieces. When we got there, my mom got a basket and headed off to the hair care and pharmacy section, and I told her that I was gonna go look in the bedding department if they still had any fleece blankets left over that they had on sale for like $2. So she had that if I go down before her, she would still be around that area. I managed to find a few blankets and headed off to find my mom to stick them in my basket. She was right, she was still in the same section, and it seemed like she would be there forever. Across the way, where they had all of their Easter candy and decorations, so I told her I was gonna go see if they had any of those pooping animals themed candy dispensers. I loved those things. My sister gave me one years ago, a sort of a joke for Easter, and I loved it. So she was giving me one every year since for Easter, Christmas, and whatever else. I have quite a collection and love getting them. It is a long-standing and fun tradition between me and my sister. When I get over to the Easter section, there is no one there but me, and I'm relieved, because most of the time people are flocked there in the seasonal sections, like moths to a flame, and refuse to move from their spots to let anyone else get a look. So I'm browsing through and checking out the candy when this guy comes around the corner into the aisle I am in. He's a nice looking guy. He looks to be about 19 to 20, and at first all seemed well. I'm going on looking at all of the stuff when I get this feeling as if he was staring at me. So I move down the aisle, pretending to look at the stuff while trying to look if he's actually staring at me or not. And he is. I thought to myself, okay, he's just a young guy and probably thinks I'm a young girl around his age, and he's just checking me out or something. After another minute or 2 of this, it becomes clear he isn't looking at anything in the aisle but me, and every time I glanced his way, he averts his gaze really quickly and pretends to be checking out a product. At this point, it just becomes too weird for me. If he would have said something, I think maybe I would have felt more comfortable, but he just kept staring holes right through me, and it began to make me feel uneasy. While he was pretending to look at the product on the shelf and trying to look interested in it, I seized the chance to quickly move around to the aisle on the other side. He didn't see which way I went, and when I was on the other side, alone for a bit, I felt that maybe I was just being too paranoid, and that's when I looked up to see him standing right next to me. I never heard him or seen him enter, and boom, he's right there, all up in my space. I'm kind of startled, and then my creep meter goes up, and I start to get the heebie-jeebies, and the feeling of something ain't right with this dude. So I move on down the aisle, trying not to show any fear, and a couple of seconds, and he's moving right along with me. So I quickly turn around as if I'm looking at something on the shelves behind me, and he does the same. About that time, thank God some woman comes down the aisle with her budgie and distracts him, more like startles him, so I move to another aisle. I'm in there for a bit before he finds me again, and he slowly starts inching his way closer and closer to me. He's wearing a hooded sweatshirt, and as he gets closer, he starts putting his hands under his shirt, and it sounds like he is fiddling with his belt buckle, all the while stealing glances of me. At this time, I'm panicking and trying to move away from him, but he follows me everywhere. I look him straight in the face, and he's just staring blankly at me, all the while still doing whatever it is he's doing under his shirt. About that time, both the woman from the other aisle and my mom come in, and I am so relieved. My mom tells me that she is going to the food department, and I just say, I'll go with you. At that point, I wasn't about to go anywhere by myself in that store with that weirdo on my heels. As we leave, he is acting all normal, as if he wasn't doing anything creepy, and picks up a bag of random candy and walks out of the other end of the aisle. Finally, I feel relieved, and that I am in the clear. So on the way to the food section, I remembered I needed to stop by the pet department and get my dog Otis a bag of his favorite treats. So my mom continues onto the drink aisle, and as I pick up a bag, I look to my left, and to my horror, there is this guy again. I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck? He has still been following me this whole time, and now he's got me along again. At this point, I'm really wishing we had come to Walmart when it was like rush hour and the place was like packed sardines. At least I wouldn't find myself so isolated and alone in aisles with this creepy dude. I get my dog treats and walked as fast as I can out of the aisle, headed for the drink section where my mom said she would be. Thank God she is there, and I stick my treats in the basket and decide I'm not going anywhere else in that store alone. The whole entire time we were there, he was in every single aisle we went in, just staring me down and looking for any opportunity when he might find me by myself again. But I never gave him the chance. We got our stuff and went to check out. He tried to check out in the line too, I guess, of following us out. But thank God the little old lady in front of him picked up something that didn't have a price tag, and she held up that line and he couldn't go anywhere else. By that time, we were finished checking out and got the heck out of there. As we were loading the stuff in the car, I saw him come out of the front door and just stand on the sidewalk scanning to see where I went. But he never saw me because I hid on the other side of the car and he gave up. I told my mom about it on the way home, and she agreed with me that he was acting strangely in a stalker-like manner, and that he very well must have thought I was just some 15 to 16-year-old girl alone. Who knows what his intentions were if in fact I had been 15 to 16 and alone. He may very well have followed me out and tried to kidnap me, but who knows, and I hope no one ever has to find out. So creepy dude in Walmart who stalked me, don't do that to anyone else. Number 2. When I was 18, I got a job at Walmart. Small town, not much else there for someone fresh out of high school. I'd been there about a month and worked in the jewelry department, usually from mid-afternoon until the department closed at 9 p.m. And I would close the department myself, but obviously, Walmart is open 24 hours, so other people were always around. One night, I'm locking the cases up and putting things away, and an overnight stalker walks by and says hi. I look up, smile, and say hi back, then go about my business. This guy, the only way I can describe him is to say he looks like one of the BGs. Shoulder-length frizzy hair, kind of bouncy hop to his step when he walked, mid-50s. This started to become a regular thing. He'd walked by and say hi, and I would say hi back. That's it. No conversations ever took place. Then on my birthday, a few of my friends who worked there got me cake and I hugged them and said thank you. About an hour later, Mr. BG's comes around with a birthday card and gave it to my manager to give it to me. Manager thought it was extremely funny that this weirdo got me a card until I opened it. Happy birthday. I saw you hugging those guys earlier. It made me really mad, but I called a friend and talked about it, and he made me realize you are allowed to have friends other than me. Just please, don't hug them anymore. Save those hugs for me. I don't know what kind of emotion showed on my face, but my manager grabbed the card and read it, then walked me back to the store manager's office and showed it to him. Store manager said the guy was obviously joking, but that he would talk to him about it. I didn't see Mr. BG's for around a week, until one night, while I was closing, he plunked down a stuffed envelope on my counter as he walked by without a word. Inside was 6 pages, front and back, of pure crazy. It was basically his entire life story, all about his family and schools he went to, but with weird stuff like how his sister was a psychic and his father was an exorcist and all sorts of weirdness. The end of the letter was about how his friend, who was 18 months old, was missing, and he knew she was being raped because he could hear her screaming his names in his dreams. What the fuck? So that also went to the store manager, and he had me write a written complaint, and he told me to go outside by myself and not to wander near where the guy might be while I'm not on my breaks. No. Get rid of him. 2 nights later, I was finishing up for the night, and the way the counter is set up, there is one opening and the counters go all the way around both sides. He brought a hand cart around with boxes for my department, but pushed it into the only opening in the counters, so I was trapped inside. He just stood there and stared at me while I looked at him with what I'm sure was pure terror. I was then, and still I am now, riddled with anxiety. I don't like confrontation, and the last thing I wanted was for this weirdo to confront me about me reporting him twice. He whispers, "Sorry, didn't mean to scare ya." I turned around and started finishing my closing tasks, pretending he wasn't there, even though I could feel him watching me. After a few minutes, I just looked at him and said, "Weren't you told to stay away from me?" He gave me this gross predator grin and said, "Store's manager's name," asked me if I was joking. I told him I was. Then he leaned in as close to me as he could get, with the counter between us, and whispered, "But I am not joking." Then he walked away. For 2 weeks after that, he would randomly show up whenever I was. I would leave for lunch, he would be there. Even on workplaces, I would go to the mall, he would be there. Another department manager told me he had been reported by 4 other people over the last 2 years for very similar behavior. I again went to my store manager, who told me the guy was harmless and maybe had a little bit of a crush. He was in his 50s and I was 18-19 during this crap. A week later, I gave my notice and quit. He still works there, 13 years later. Still gives me the heebie-jeebies. Number 3. I shouldn't be so amused by this incident, but in truth, I am. It's a bit morbid now that I think about it, because it really could have been much worse if we weren't paying attention or the people around us just ignored what was happening. This should have been scared me more than it did, since it happened to me. My roommate and I, both females in our mid to late 20s, decided to go to the Walmart in the next town instead of the one closer to my home, which is considered much safer if you talked with the locals. The one we went to often joke that you'd be run over in the parking lot on any given day with how some of the customers are there. I say joke loosely because people have actually been run over in that parking lot before. Other than that, the place was pretty okay. We both were in pretty full moods during our occupations and thought walking around Walmart at midnight would help lift our moods. Since it was one of the few places opened, it wasn't the first time we have done it. I'm a night owl by nature and also get claustrophobic and severely drained with crowds during the day, so most of my Walmart outings have to be at night. The walking helped a little considering we had just gotten back into Pokemon Go due to Gen 2 and 3 being added, and the Santa Pikachus and Raichus for the holiday season. I'm still searching for the gym that hosts an Absol raid. Anyway, once we went through most of the store, we had moved to the front toward to self-checkout and waited in a small line. At the front of the store were 3 associates and a greeter at the door. The greeter is a little detail that comes into play a little later. Out of the corner of my eye, a man shorter than me, but taller than my roommate, pulled up, almost right-angled to us, almost as if he was trying to cut us in line. He didn't say a word to us or even acknowledge that we were standing right there. At first, we didn't think anything of this, other than that he was just some rude jerk trying to get out quicker. He was a medium build, white, short brown hair, and a baseball cap, and a dark hoodie with dirty-looking jeans. He didn't really look out of place. My roommate, possibly irritated with this guy, then suggested that we should get snacks before we checked out, since we were already there. I shrugged and agreed. Nothing worse than getting home, regretting that you didn't grab it when you had the chance. We got out of line and started to head to the far back of the store. Behind us, we hear a noisy cart rushing up as if to keep with us. I have long legs, which means I don't walk, I stride. My roommate has learned how to keep up with me when we walk side by side. Whoever was behind us had to rush to keep up with us. I turned my head to look out of the corner of my eye at this person and noticed it was the man. I hear my roommate mutter, "You saw him too," in a deadpan voice. I answered back quickly with a, "Yeah," and sighed. I really was not in the mood for this. Neither of us was. Though, I would think no one would want to be in the mood to deal with a stalker or a creeper. I often think someone has to be out of their damn mind to want to stalk me, of all people. I have had the idea that if you showed you're crazy first, you might make them reconsider you as a target. You know, I'm really in the mood to bite someone in the face, I say in a loud voice. No joke, I actually said this. My roommate agreed with me, just as loud as the cart behind us stopped. We pretended like nothing had happened and turned into the soda aisle. When we saw no one behind us, we conversed about what was going on. I'm not going to lie. My adrenaline was going and it felt great. Morbid, I know. It almost felt like a game. It was so surreal. I really didn't feel scared at any point during this, even though I thought I should have. Probably because I know my roommate would jump at this guy like an unarranged spider monkey, and I had her back if he had tried anything. We found his cart a few aisles down in the main aisle when we heard it stop, still filled with the same stuff that we saw when we were at the front. Had this guy been following us throughout our trip here and we just now noticed him? If not, how long has he been watching us? As we talked about the incident, I kept an eye on that cart. We knew it was his because we did not pass a car to get to the snack area. We would have had to break our side-by-side walk if we had. There wouldn't have been enough room in order to continue that way. We decided to spend a little more time in the store to make sure we weren't being followed again. We lingered around the woman's clothes for a little bit, and that's when I noticed a man wearing almost the same kind of clothes hunched down at one of the self-checkout machines. I kept an eye on him as well, but when he stood straight, he was much taller than me. The man who was following us was shorter than me, but taller than my roommate. I'm almost 6 foot. The clothes this man wore had to be a coincidence. This guy was busy fighting with the machine to try to pay, and the abandoned cart was still in the main aisle. After I was sure this wasn't the guy, we went to check out and everything was fine. It wasn't until we started to leave that I noticed that the greeter was gone and replaced with a dark-haired woman in non-Walmart attire. She wore a beige jacket, but under it was a security uniform. A small detail that had slipped my mind, probably due to the adrenaline. When we got home, we started to think about it more. I am not sure if what I said and my roommate loudly agreeing with me is what scared this guy off, or if he saw someone that was coming for him. It could have been a combination of both. My roommate told me that she did see an employee leading a cop down one of the aisles, something I did not see. It felt pretty good that people were actually paying attention to what was going on. I am a crime buff, and I found cases where the public ignored things like this, only for the victim or victims to turn up missing or dead. I mean, the guy was pretty obvious. We can only figure he was trying to get in front of us in the line so he could get out into the parking lot before we did and do God knows what. When we didn't stay in line, he followed after us. There were a lot of employees on the floor too, as it was the time of night. Stalkers would usually be able to do their jobs without many people to deal with. Someone saw something and notified security and a police officer, and one stayed at the front while the other was possibly looking for the guy. My mom tried to point out that it would have been stupid of him to try to take on 2 females, but I had to disagree. Again, crime buff. I can point to many cases where multiple females were killed by a single man around the same time. It's not unheard of. We can only guess that he had a weapon waiting somewhere either of him or out in the parking lot to make what he wanted to do much easier. What would have been really stupid for him was to mess with us in the moods we were in though. The bitch face expression I get when I'm not feeling well isn't enough of an indicator that I don't want to be messed with or shouldn't be messed with. I've been told if looks could kill so many times when it has come to that expression. Add my roommate into the mix, someone who I've adopted as a sister and consider to be one of my platonic soulmates, and things would probably get violent. Despite some of my expressions, I am not usually a violent person at all. Either way, although I am intrigued by what happened, my roommate and I are grateful it didn't turn into anything worse. I do get chills at the thought of what would have happened if we had gone out to the parking lot before or after him. I would like to say never going back to that Walmart again, but they do get different stuff than our local one does. We run the risk of running into people like that just leaving the house alone. Or not, if you want to get technical. It was just a strange incident, one I don't want to happen again. Number 4. To preface this, I work night shift at Walmart. My shifts are almost always 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., except in these first few months of the year when they are cutting back our hours and I sometimes start at 8 p.m. or leave at 6 a.m. Late last year, I'd say around September, when the weather was still nice outside, I went into Walmart during the day to buy some groceries. I had a few things in my basket and was walking from the back of the store towards the self-checkout area. I noticed out of my peripherals that a man, probably mid-20s, a little taller than me and wearing a baseball bat, was approaching me from the other side of the features. When he was close, he started talking to me. I see people I know all the time when I'm here. "Oh," I asked, assuming he's seen me there in the mornings while I was working. "Yeah, it's weird how every time I'm here, I see the same people all the time." He kept rephrasing himself, and I didn't really know what to say. He kept making small talk as I didn't stop walking to the self-checkout. It was kind of just going along with the conversation, like you do when some random person is talking about the weather. Now that I look back on it, when he told me he sees the same people all the time, I thought he looked a little familiar and assumed he was a vendor and worked some mornings there. And I mistakenly mentioned I worked there and also see the same faces. Then he told me to have a nice day, and I checked out and went to my car. A lot of fellow employees greet me at Walmart when I go there during the day, so I didn't really think much of it. Then it got super weird super fast, and the exit in road splits into a left turn only lane and the other a straightaway. I was turning, stopped, when this white Ford Explorer pulls up next to me and beeps loudly. I was already turning, but I looked into my rear view, and surely enough, it was that guy from earlier. I recognized his face and his baseball cap. He sat at the stop watching me pull away. All right, a little weird, but he's probably just being friendly. When I got home, I told my boyfriend and he immediately thought it was strange, and then said I was wrong for even engaging in conversation with this man because guys get the wrong idea. My boyfriend also works with me on my shift, but his car has a blown head, so we've just been using mine. Keep in mind that as employees, we aren't allowed to park close to the store. We are limited to parking at the far end of the lot or in front of the other stores in the shopping center. I have a typical spot. I always park in front of the AT&T place, which is next to the gym, which is next to the Walmart. About 2 months ago, my boyfriend said he went to walk out to the car and brake and saw the white Ford Explorer parked next to it. The guy sitting inside. When he saw my boyfriend, he left. This happened again in the same month, except my boyfriend was sitting in the car and the white Ford Explorer drove up to Walmart, then passed my boyfriend staring at him. Then, the last month, I was driving home from work. It was barely 7 a.m., still pretty dark outside, and I was crossing down the hallway towards the exit for my town. There was a car following 2 lengths behind me. We were both doing the speed limit, nothing abnormal. Suddenly, this car begins to speed up, gets in the fast lane as if to pass me, but slows down so that we are neck and neck. The driver turns on his interior light, waves at me, then speeds off. It was the guy in the white Ford Explorer. I just stared at him, bewildered. I didn't know what to think. It dawned on me. He knows where I work. He knows what my car looks like. He was probably waiting for me to leave work, then followed my car when I left. Thank God he didn't follow me home, because I never would have realized it. I was even totally unsuspecting when I walked out to my car alone. Now, what happened a couple of days ago is why I'm even posting this. I think this is starting to escalate. It was a typical night. Both my boyfriend and I worked along with our co-worker and friend. I call him Mark. When Mark works, we always park next to him so we can talk on lunch and breaks with the windows rolled down. Mark parks farther away from the store, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. So we finish up the night, clock out, and Mark heads out to his car while my boyfriend and I buy some stuff to make for dinner. When check out and head to the car, Mark is still there, which is unusual for him since he books it out of there like a bat out of the hill every morning with his window down. "Hey man, did you get my text?" He calls out, smoking a cigarette. "No, let me check my phone." My boyfriend pulls out his phone and I see a pretty long unread text from Mark. Pretty much, this weird guy came out of nowhere and was touching and looking at the inside of your girlfriend's car, Mark said. My immediate thought was, some random likes my car enough to come up and touch it. Weird, but okay. Like, he just walked up and started touching the fence and looking inside it. Then, when he saw me sitting here, he asked me about the decorations. I told him I didn't know anything about them, and then he told me to have a nice day. We immediately started checking for damages, slashed tires. Nothing. We get in the car, and 3 of us just sit there contemplating the reasoning behind this. The Ford Explorer guy had almost slipped my mind. His encounters were a month or more apart, but then I started thinking about him again. There were 2 cars parked near us, a white 2010 Pontiac G6 and, surely enough, a white Ford Explorer. Up until this point, I didn't know the make of the car he drove, but I knew it was definitely a white SUV. Mark said he came from the direction of those 3 cars, so unless he walked to Walmart at 7 a.m., one of those cars was his. The Explorer was facing the opposite direction, and I quickly wrote down the plate number. I started asking Mark what the guy looked like. About your boyfriend's height, kind of a gangster-looking guy. Keep in mind, I've only seen the guy once when he wasn't in his car, which was 4 months prior to this. The height sounded right, but I didn't really know. We decided to sit there and wait until this guy came out and confront him. Just as we were about to give up and leave, a guy starts walking our way out of Walmart. He was wearing a black hoodie, dark jeans, and a camo bandana. When he saw us, he put his sunglasses on. Both of us looked towards Mark. Is that him? Is that the guy? No, that's not him. Mark shook his head. The guy walks to the Explorer, sits in the driver's seat, and lights a cigarette with the door open. After he closed it, I looked back to Mark. Are you sure it's not him? Yeah, it's him, that's the guy. Mark nodded. Explorer guy started his car and looped around our cars, staring at us, then looped again to exit the parking lot. Mark said he didn't want to tell us because he didn't want my boyfriend to lose his job. I'm pretty sure if Mark would have told us, then some shit would have gone down. I'm pretty positive now that this guy has been stalking me. For how long, I don't know. I'm starting to think maybe even before he approached me that day in Walmart. It's obvious that the guy drove to Walmart, saw my car, parked next to it, then realized while he was closing my car that Mark was sitting there. So he asks Mark about the shark fence to try and make him think he just was interested in how it looked and not being completely shady. I'm creeped the fuck out, but I have his plate number. This morning, before we left work, my boyfriend bought me a pepper spray, and I am not parking elsewhere, and I am going to start asking co-workers if they'll walk me to my car in the mornings when I'm alone. I don't know what I can do, or if anyone would take this seriously, because he hasn't tried anything yet. I'm thinking, this definitely isn't over yet. Number 5. When I was a junior in high school, my friends and I were hanging out and smoking, nothing too productive, just chilling and watching those bad 80s horror movies that were scary in the wrong way. We ran out of snackage. My boyfriend Jess and I were volunteered by the whole group to go buy some more cookies and crackers. So we drove to the nearby Walmart. Once we parked, Jess had to use the bathroom and then find something for us to drink. I went to find the cookie aisle. I walked past the frozen section. The whole store was very quiet, except the pop music that eerily echoed through the otherwise quiet store. I got to the snack food aisle, and there was a woman at the other end, looking at the Nilla wafers. She was a bleached blonde. Though her hair looked unwashed, it was greasy and knotted. She had lots of blue eyeshadow and eyeliner. Her skin was leathery and tan. She wore a fur coat that seemed to swallow her whole body. I mean, this thing was huge, like Macklemore's thrift shop type jacket. The woman was squinting at the crackers, like she was focusing very hard. She glanced at me a few times, but when she did, she snapped her head back to the boxes of cookies, almost scared to see me looking back at her. I walked down by her end and slowly, because that was where the windmill cookies were. My nostrils were hit with a rotting scent. It was putrid, like she was hiding dead rodents in her jacket. I smiled at her and said hello, trying to be polite. The woman's spurting blue eyes widened, like she was excited and stunned that I had engaged in a conversation with her. She smiled a wide grin, showing off her rotted teeth. "Hi," she said, with lots of enthusiasm. Her voice was deep and raspy. She kept smiling and staring at me like she was expecting something from me. I grinned and walked past her to leave the aisle to go find Jess, though she kept standing too close and made it a tight squeeze between her and the rack of food. Her undying gaze followed me as I walked out of the aisle and down the other rows. Jess was in the soda pop section. He greeted me with a, "Hey Joan," and I soon forgot about my weird encounter with the smelly fur coat lady. We grabbed a few more types of chips and cookies, and then headed for the card aisle because one of our friends' birthday was coming up, and we thought, hey, why not get him a card while we are here? I can never buy a card without spending 45 minutes reading all of them. After we were in the aisle for a few minutes, I looked up from the Hallmark card to show Jess a card I thought would be funny. The lady stood behind Jess, smiling at us, with that same rotten and blinking grin. "Hi," I said, a bit freaked out, mostly to let Jess know someone was behind him. He turned around to meet her. "Hi, you two," she said, almost giddy. Jess politely nodded and smiled, looking a bit confused. She stepped closer to us and kept touching the different cards like she was browsing them, but her smile and burning stare were never broken. "Are you two boyfriend and girlfriend?" she questioned, piercing the awkward silence. Yeah," Jess said, still trying to be polite. She smiled and nodded with her eyebrows raised, like she was encouraging him to go on. I grabbed a random card and snatched Jess's arm. "Have a nice night," I said hastily, walking out of the aisle with Jess. Jess went to a self-checkout lane. I was on the opposite side of the rows of checkout lanes, while Jess was checking out. I was looking for an impulse buy candy when someone grabbed my arm. I quickly turned to meet the wall of an awful stench and the woman. "Please, buy me this, Joan," she hissed in my face. In the other hand was a pink Barbie doll hairbrush. I couldn't speak. I was in utter shock. "Joan, please." She begged a bit louder this time. Being my brave self, I started bawling and saying, "Please stop." She gripped my arm so hard, I looked down to her untrimmed nails, digging into my arm. I actually started to bleed a little. "Joan," she said like an upset mother, "come on. Please, please. I want it," she begged. I cried and asked her to please stop. The woman got on her knees and tugged on my arm relentlessly. I cried and asked her to please stop and that I would get her whatever she wanted. The woman sprung up and grabbed me by my fistful of my hair and shoved me to the ground. I yelled for Jess and he ran into the row. He grabbed it off of me, and a worker saw what was going on and called the police. A few workers held the lady. The police got to the store and questioned Jess and I. They arrested the woman, and she stared at me and smiled on the way out. "Bye-bye, Joan," she cackled. I assume she was following us and heard Jess call me Joan. I don't know if she was on drugs or what, but creepy Walmart lady, let's not meet again. Number 6. For visuals, I will say I was 13 at the time, and it was the day before the 4th. I went to Walmart with my parents for an oil change. It took like 30 minutes for them to change it, so we went browsing through Walmart. When we came in, I saw some man, late 40s, early 50s. The man gave a creepy smile and wave. I didn't think much of it because, well, maybe he was just friendly. We first went to the craft section, party supplies. When nearing the corner, I could hear someone stomp running from the other side. Obviously, the stomp runner was the creep from earlier. When he saw me, he said, "So, here we are again," with the same creepy smile, and did a weird chuckle. I replied, yeah, I guess we did." After that weird encounter, I felt like someone was following me. I would sometimes hear footsteps from the other side of the aisle, kind of like someone was trying to follow me, but keep their presence unaware. Clearly, it wasn't unaware. I wanted my parents to see I was getting stalked, so quickly turned corners before he could turn first and continue his stalking. There he was. I knew that sick freak was there. He looked at me with a somewhat serious look, and I did the same. 5 seconds later, he smiled and said, "Oh, hey you, can I get your name?" As creeped out as I was, I smiled and replied, "I'm Sarah. You?" He said his name, Will. My name isn't Sarah, but my parents and I both knew giving my name it wasn't something to share with a man with a creepy vibe. I hoped that after that encounter he'd stop. Leaving, my mom whispered that he was a creep. I knew he had found us again, but I didn't do the turn quick to see him again thing. After shopping, we went in line to pay for what we had bought and get into our changed oil car. In line, who do we see? Will. This time, even more creepy. Will reads my shirt saying, "You had me at brunch," he said. "We didn't have a brunch, did we?" With his creepy smile, I just gave him a glare. Soon after the awkward silence, he said, "Brunch would be lovely." I gave him the glare again. I still, to this day, wonder why my parents did not speak up. After paying, we left and he followed us out. He dropped what he had gotten just to follow us. He said, "Wait, I'm just wondering if you were going to the fair." Our town has an annual fair. We go every year. But I wasn't going to tell him that. My dad replied, "We don't go to that fair." The man went back in and first said, "Oh, alrighty. See you soon, Sarah." When he went in, my mom said, "You should have said, 'Hey creep, I'm 13. But I really think my parents should have done that for me. I didn't see him at the fair or after that day, but Will, let's not meet again. Number 7. Happened before I got hired, but I heard enough about it from coworkers. An elderly couple would come in once a week to go shopping. The old man had troubles walking, so he would kiss his wife and go sit in the fitting room area until she was done. One day they came in and did their little kiss, and he also handed her his wedding ring, like he knew something was about to happen. A couple minutes of sitting there after his wife walked off, the guy collapsed to the floor and the fitting room ladies called 911. One of the department managers of the time was also a paramedic, so he rushed over. The old guy started to cough up blood, and every available associate had to come and make a wall of people so customers couldn't see what is going on. All of these associates saw and heard the guy choking on his own blood coming out of his nose and ears, dying on the floor. They were trying to find his wife, and no one could find her. The associates who saw it still have flashbacks about it. Hey there, and thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. And if you like my videos and want to see more, subscribe to my channel. And I will see you all in my next video.